A man stepped outside and took a breath of fresh air, only to witness a terrifying sight. His neck swelled up instantly, puffing out like a drum. But even more dangerous was the thick fog surrounding him. This white, poisonous fog could kill instantly. If you breathed it in, your body would turn to blood. The earth is now covered in this deadly fog. Breathing safely is a luxury only the wealthy can afford. Don't just stand there. Share this with your friends who are out of work and show them what the future holds. In the year 2205, Earth had been ravaged by human pollution, leading to a catastrophic environmental decline. Initially, the air was filled with small particles that made breathing difficult but weren't lethal. However, everything changed when a mysterious and deadly fog enveloped the planet. This white, poisonous fog was so toxic that a single inhalation meant certain death. It spread rapidly, claiming the lives of 99% of the population. To escape the deadly air, people sought refuge underground. The wealthy secured their safety in well-protected shelters, while the common folk struggled to survive on the surface, their faces hidden behind masks to filter the toxins. A decade passed, and the level of poisonous elements in the atmosphere diminished. Although the air remained hazardous, with the right safety gear, humans could now venture outside. Rescue operations were initiated, and research centers were established on the surface. Scientists, including Cora, were dispatched to these centers to gather data and conduct studies. Cora's new home was one such scientific research center. For the past few years, Cora had been deeply immersed in her research. According to the predictions of artificial intelligence, it would take another 30 years for the Earth's air to clear of the poisonous fog. Despite the lengthy timeline, Cora was hopeful about the prospect of humans returning to the surface one day. Her seniors often sent motivational videos to keep spirits high, though Cora usually dismissed them as mere formalities. One evening, after wrapping up her day's work, Cora noticed a countdown alert on the system. It reminded her of the crucial pickup scheduled for the next day. Missing it would set her back months. The following morning, she donned her protective equipment and exited the research center, which was situated beneath an old factory. The site was modest, but she had grown accustomed to it. As soon as Cora stepped outside, she was greeted by a blanket of white fog, the same deadly mist that had decimated the population. Thankfully, the fog's toxins could not penetrate the skin. She hurried toward the supply drop point, navigating through the familiar yet eerie fog. Upon reaching the designated location, Cora discovered that the drone had mistakenly dropped the supplies into a nearby pond, likely due to the obscured visibility caused by the fog's density. Approaching the pond, she retrieved the packages, relieved to find them undamaged and dry. After decontaminating herself, Cora entered the control room of her base only to discover that the network had gone down. Despite multiple attempts, she couldn't establish any communication with headquarters. Worried, she tried reaching out to her friend Baker, whose research center was near the crucial signal tower and typically maintained the network. However, there was no response, which was unusual given the proximity of their bases. Concerned for Baker's safety, Cora quickly prepared her equipment and set out for his location. Using a map for guidance, she made her way through the persistent, dense fog to Baker's research center. The scene there was dire, worse than at her own base. When she managed to pry open the bunker door, she was met with the shocking sight of the interior completely flooded. Cora remembered their conversation just a week ago when everything seemed fine. Now, with no time to ponder what had happened, she realized the urgency of fixing the network connected to over 200 bunkers. She located the base station tower in a nearby clearing, but upon arriving, she found Baker dead, his body indicating he had been deceased for several days. Next to him, a letter revealed Baker's struggles. It said he had been unable to contact headquarters for many days. Despite repeated attempts, no communication was possible. Overwhelmed by the flooding of his bunker and a shortage of resources, Baker had taken his own life. This revelation shocked Cora. She couldn't fathom how the situation had deteriorated so rapidly since their last conversation. Now suspecting that survivors might be attacking headquarters, Cora checked her map. The headquarters weren't too far, but the route there crossed a swampy forest filled with the lethal fog. Even with her protective suit, surviving in such conditions would be challenging. Nevertheless, determined to understand the full extent of the crisis, Cora decided to make her way to the headquarters. After a grueling 2-day journey, Cora finally reached the headquarters. She activated the protective protocol, CODE, and cautiously entered the building. The sight that greeted her was chilling. The entire place was in ruins, empty, desolate, and abandoned. There wasn't a single employee in sight. Debris littered the floors and broken equipment hung precariously from the walls. Desperate for answers, Cora found a working computer and accessed the system. What she discovered was a grim emergency notice. It stated that the project had been shut down due to a lack of resources, and all employees had been ordered to return to their assigned bunkers. This revelation puzzled her. If the headquarters had abandoned the operation, why hadn't the thousands of research centers on Earth been informed? Had they all been left to fend for themselves without guidance or support? The thought chilled her to the core. As Cora mulled over the possibility that they had been abandoned entirely, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned sharply to find 3 survivors entering the building, their eyes immediately fixated on her smart bracelet, a critical piece of technology connected to a surveillance drone still circling above. The leader of the group made a lunge for her wrist, attempting to tear the bracelet off. Reacting swiftly, Cora pulled out her weapon and fired, taking down 2 of the attackers. The sharp, echoing sound of gunfire filled the empty headquarters. The remaining survivor, terrified by her ruthless response, backed away and fled into the shadows without a word. Shaken but determined, Cora consulted the map. The nearest underground shelter was a daunting 500 kilometers away, a journey that would take at least a month on foot. Worse still, the headquarters had been completely stripped of resources. With no food or supplies, she wouldn't last more than 3 days in these harsh conditions. After weighing her options, she decided to return to her bunker, where she had enough rations to sustain herself on the long journey to safety. As she exited the headquarters, her drone, which had been faithfully hovering above, suddenly began to malfunction. It wobbled in the air, its lights flickering erratically, before losing control entirely. Before Cora could grasp what was happening, a dark figure emerged from the fog and lunged at her from behind. A fierce struggle ensued. Cora managed to stab the attacker, her instincts sharp and her determination unwavering. But she barely had time to catch her breath before more figures appeared, emerging from the dense forest like phantoms. Outnumbered and overwhelmed, she fought valiantly, but one of the attackers managed to stab her from behind. The pain shot through her body as her vision blurred, and she collapsed to the ground. When Cora regained consciousness, she found herself confined in a cramped room. Shortly thereafter, a man entered, introducing himself as Joseph, the leader of the camp. Joseph expressed a deep-seated disdain for research centers, explaining that during the disaster, while the wealthy and influential secured places in underground shelters, people like him were left to fend for themselves on the surface. He recounted how, when research centers were later established, the administration barred common folks like his group, citing a shortage of resources. Feeling betrayed and abandoned, Joseph and his followers resorted to robbing employees from these centers. Joseph's current target was Cora's drone, which had inexplicably flown away. He demanded that Cora enter the code to recall the drone, threatening her life if it did not return within 10 minutes. Unbeknownst to him, Cora saw an opportunity when he momentarily left to fetch a weapon. She quickly unlocked her handcuffs, overpowered the guard, seized her mask, and escaped from the camp. Once outside, Cora was almost caught by a patrol team, but a sudden gunshot from the forest diverted their attention. Turning toward the sound, Cora was stunned to see her rescuer was someone who looked exactly like her. The doppelganger didn't allow any time for questions, urging Cora to grab a weapon from the ground. They took cover in a nearby hut and began defending themselves against Joseph's men. The thick fog enveloping them made visibility nearly zero, which the mysterious woman used to her advantage. She maneuvered behind Joseph's men and launched a surprise attack. While Cora was inclined to retreat, her look-alike was relentless. Just as Cora considered joining her, Joseph burst into the hut. Reacting swiftly, Cora confronted him and managed to kill him. After the fierce confrontation, the camp lay silent, its survivors defeated. Amidst the chaos, Cora sought out the woman who looked just like her, desperate for answers. The woman, identifying herself as Clone 748, revealed a startling truth that reshaped everything Cora knew about herself and her mission. They were not ordinary humans, but clones, part of a secretive initiative known as the Mist Project. This project was developed in response to the Earth's atmosphere being saturated with toxic elements. Scientists had estimated that it would take about 100 years for the Earth to naturally purify itself, enough for humans to safely return to the surface. However, with the aid of large-scale purification machines, this time frame could potentially be halved to 50 years. The challenge lay in filtering out some exceptionally fine toxic particles that machines alone could not capture. The solution devised by the wealthy and powerful was both radical and controversial. They created numerous clones using their own DNA. These clones, including Cora and the woman she now faced, were engineered to not only gather resources but to expedite the air purification process. Their bodies were designed to absorb the toxic elements, essentially using them as biological filters. For 20 years, this project had been underway, and as it neared its conclusion, the decision was made to decommission the clones. Tragically for Cora's counterpart, her team, tasked with resource collection, was ordered to be disbanded. As part of the decommissioning process, each clone had a bomb implanted that was scheduled to detonate upon completion of their final mission. By some stroke of luck, the bomb in Cora's clone had failed to activate, allowing her to survive. Returning to the headquarters in the aftermath, she accessed the project's files on a computer and discovered new information. The purification efforts were progressing well, and some higher altitude areas were beginning to emerge where humans might soon be able to survive without protective gear. Cora's clone discovered on the computer that the wealthy elite living in the underground shelters had established an open-air base on the surface. It was said to be a haven, a symbol of hope for the planet's future. Determined to find refuge and answers, the clone decided to make her way to the base. When she shared her plan with Cora, the truth of their existence as clones weighed heavily on her mind. Nevertheless, Cora resolved to accompany her clone on this journey, believing it might provide the answers they both sought. With the map guiding their way, the two set out toward the base. However, as they navigated the ruins of a once thriving civilization, they were ambushed by another group of survivors. A fierce shootout erupted amidst the crumbling remains of the city. The clone, with her exceptional marksmanship, took down many attackers but was gravely wounded in the process. Cora, fueled by adrenaline and the instinct to survive, managed to eliminate the remaining attackers, but the toll was heavy. Bloodied and battered, they emerged from the ruins, but the clone's injuries were too severe, and her life began slipping away. The clone, her strength waning, expressed a final wish: to see the open-air base with her own eyes. If the base truly existed, it would prove that humanity still had a chance to rebuild. Determined to grant this dying wish, Cora supported her clone as they climbed toward the hill where the base was supposed to be. The journey was grueling, and the clone's condition worsened with each step. When they finally reached the base of the hill, the clone could go no further. Cora promised to find the base and return with the truth. Summoning all her strength, Cora climbed the rest of the way alone. When she reached the top, her heart sank. There was no base. The hill was shrouded in thick fog, and nothing but desolation stretched out before her. But when she returned to the clone, lying weakly at the bottom of the hill, she couldn't bear to tell her the truth. "The base is real," Cora lied softly, tears welling in her eyes. "It's beautiful. There's hope." A faint smile spread across the clone's face at those words. Despite knowing their existence as clones, they had shared the same dream: to restore the Earth and ensure humanity's survival. With a final breath, the clone passed away, her face still holding the faintest glimmer of hope. Cora buried her clone at the top of the hill, marking the grave with a piece of debris from the ruins. Though the base didn't exist, this small act allowed the clone a peaceful farewell. Cora whispered a silent promise to carry on their shared mission. Exhausted and heartbroken, Cora began her journey back to her bunker, only to find it destroyed. Inside, chaos greeted her. Her supplies ransacked, the walls breached, and evidence of destruction everywhere. In the center of the wreckage lay Joseph's lifeless body. Somehow, he had survived their earlier encounter and made his way to her bunker, consuming what remained of her rations. But the bunker had become his tomb. The lack of resources, combined with the toxic environment, had claimed his life. Cora stood in the ruins of what had been her only sanctuary, utterly disheartened. Her supplies were gone, her clone companion was dead, and the hope she had clung to seemed farther away than ever. Alone in the desolation, she stared into the foggy horizon, unsure of what to do next in a world that seemed to offer nothing but loss. Did you enjoy the video? If you did, don't forget to hit the like button. I'll be back soon with another great movie. Until then, take care and keep watching. Thank you.